Tonight on Nova Legends podcast, I have uber crazy sports parents, parents who have multiple college athletes. And tonight we're going to learn all the secrets to raising a great athlete, or at least a crazed athlete. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Love to be here.
So, well, last night I was having a dinner with my in-laws and my own parents, and we were my son is at UVA starting this year, and he actually has COVID and he's been sick a little bit. So I was on the phone coaching him, telling him things he needs to do and things he needs to do to get ready. And my in-laws, my lovely in-laws, told me, says, you got to let your kids learn how to do these things by themselves. And it was shocking to me because as a parent, as a former coach, I don't know anything except for to coach my kids or anyone through whatever they're going through. I don't know to sit back and let people do things. I'm always trying to help. And you guys are people, coaches, parents that have done the same things. You guys have coached your kids to success and excellence. So I think you guys would be able to see what I was going through. But let me introduce you guys first. First of all, I have Chris Coyer. Chris, his daughters were stars at Oakton and then Villanova, and his son played quarterback at Temple. Chris himself played at Fairfax High School. He also his wife also played at Fairfax. Got to know Chris a little bit through our social media. Chris, very nice to meet you.
Love being here.
Yeah, and then coming back is Coach Kendall Hayes. Coach Hayes is one of the greatest basketball coaches in the history of Virginia. Coach played at Groveton High School, and then he coached at Potomac High School down in Dale City. Coached his son Eric Hayes, who was a great player, and got to a couple of state Final Fours with Eric, but it actually coached the state championship before Eric got there. Eric had a great career at University of Maryland. Coach, I forgot your daughter's name.
Hannah.
Hannah, but
Yeah.
she was also a great player. Didn't love it as much as Eric, and Coach Hayes didn't love coaching the girls as much as he liked coaching the boys. But she was also a great player. But anyway, thanks for coming, Coach.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then my old friend Justin Kuzemka. Justin went to Robinson with me. He was a little bit younger than me. I went to high school with his older brother Aaron. We were the same year. Justin was a great wrestler. Also was a great soccer player, goalie. Also a good football player, kicker, I believe linebacker.
Yes.
And he's raised. I'm going to lose track here, but Chris Kuzemka was the All-State Player of the Year in basketball for Centerville High School. I think his daughter just won a national championship in soccer.
Yes.
And I think she's still in high school. And then his
She
son
started high
Daniel,
school.
his son Daniel is a goalie at Charleston Battery, a USL team, and he's also, I think he played at UNC Greensboro. He played goalie there.
He played at Clemson, then at UNC Charlotte.
Charlotte. Sorry about that. And then you have another son who played linebacker. And
He's still a linebacker. Yep, he's linebacker at Furman University.
Yeah. So anyway, Justin, great to see you again. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah. So I think first of all, as I was alluding to earlier, as a parent and Coach Hayes will talk about also as a coach, sometimes you don't want to do too much and you want your kids to learn on their own. But in this day and age, when we played sports, our parents would drop us off at the fields, and if we were good enough, we would do well, and they would keep bringing us. They may yell at us, but there wasn't any personal coaching. There wasn't the intensity that parents have today, and things have changed a lot. And I think a lot of times people laugh at some of the things parents do, but if you want your kids to succeed, it's hard to just kind of sit around and just watch them now. You feel you have to be involved. So these are some of the things I'd like to talk about tonight. So why don't we start with Chris? Chris, why don't you give your background a little bit? You're another local guy. We're all locals here. Talk about you growing up playing sports, and also your wife, and then introduce your kids to us and tell us what they did and what they achieved.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, when I was a kid, mom would just, drop me off somewhere and I'd hopefully get a ride back. Whether it be baseball practice, uh, she'd take a buddy of mine and I to the golf course in the morning, and maybe my buddy's mother would take us to baseball practice, and somehow we get dinner that night. And there wasn't a whole lot of interaction at all. It was actually kind of a bummer for me that my father wouldn't show up to my games. But it was just fun playing, but, the last football game was over, you picked up a basketball, the buzzer goes off on the last basketball game, you pick up your baseball glove. And that was pretty much the way it was.
Yeah.
Parents these days, take, I think, a lot more joy in watching their kids compete. That's the way I like to look at it anyway. Some of them take too much joy in watching their kids compete. But it's really a different kind of thing. And in some cases, particularly with the boys, money in the professional game and the cost of tuition for college has taken on a whole new meaning, with parents being involved in their kids' sports. And some take it to a level that is really unhealthy. But I think that has a lot to do with it, I think.
So Chris, tell us the names. It's Caroline and Katherine. I forgot your son's name, but tell us what your kids achieved a little bit, and tell us kind of their arc.
Yeah, well, my son has a really hard name to remember. It's the same as mine.
Okay.
So it's, uh, Chris is older than my daughters. He's 3 years older, and he was kind of a late bloomer. In order for him to do well, he had to work. He had to work at it, and he worked at it. He was passionate about sports. He was a 2-year. He ended up being a 2-year captain in basketball at Oakton, and there's no question he was a beast in football. Went on to Temple. He was their first bowl MVP in 30 years or something. Led the nation in yards per play as a sophomore over guys like RG3 and Andrew Luck, that sort of thing. He was taken by the Redskins and
Wow.
got hurt. And they said, "See you later, kid." Now he's pro in something else. And my daughters really sort of took my son's lead. They loved being around him. They'd go out and play basketball in the street with my son and his friends. And really, there was a fun fact in the program at Temple. They says, "Tell us something about you that nobody knows." And my son's comment was, my daughter or my sisters are better athletes than I am, and they were beasts, no question. I mean, they started playing travel league at 8 years old. They played 6 years of travel league in Fairfax County. They were probably better soccer players than they were basketball players. They won like 5 state cups and I don't know, regionals a couple of times. Caroline played USA soccer, and she's probably the only, as a matter of fact, I know she's the only athlete, male or female, to play both USA soccer and basketball. So, they had great careers. It was a lot of fun watching them. It was a great ride, and I can't imagine it being any more fun than it was. They won so much stuff. It was, and there was a lot of heartbreaks too, and that's part of the learning process. So.
Yeah, they're great women too. I really enjoy talking to them. So, well, Coach Hayes, now your kids, if they wanted to see you at all, they had to come to the gym. Otherwise, they weren't going to see you because you spent a lot of time at that Potomac in the Panther Pit. So, talk a little bit about Hannah and Eric. Reintroduce us to them and kind of their journey.
Yeah, and first off, I got to see Chris's girls play one time, and it took me about 30 seconds to see that they were the best two kids on the court. And I'm like, two of them, man. How sweet would that be as a coach? I never had that experience to have twins. Always dreamed of triplets, and of course that never happened either. But
hey, Coach, also talk about a little bit about your Groveton career and your Hall of Fame college career as well. If you can.
Well, I grew up in the mean streets around Maury Elementary School in the shadow of the Masonic Temple.
Yeah.
And just much like Chris, we would go down to the playground, and there, the baseball diamond there. We played baseball all the time, and I played in the played for Mount Vernon Dodge when I was a kid, and they, at the Little League, park right down there in Alexandria, and probably more baseball than anything early on. But I was kind of a tall kid, so played basketball as well, and. But it was a similar situation where you just take off in the morning, and I don't even remember what we ate during the day, to be quite honest with you. And I know we had dinner at nighttime, but you just gone all day and having fun with your buddies, and that's kind of how we learned most of the games. As far as my kids, Eric, he spent probably from the time he was maybe 4 years old on up at the gym, just hanging out, and we would practice. He'd be there most times, and he just loved it. I didn't have to do much to get him interested. He loved Dad, and he wanted to be where Dad was, and I was at the gym. And even when I wasn't there, one of my early memories of Eric, I think he was 6 years old, and we had practice. I don't know what it was, but I came home, and my wife Nan says, points at him, he's been sitting there since noon. And he was sitting there watching, I think he was 5 years old, 6 years old, watching the ACC tournament, because on Thursdays, I think it was a Thursday, it started at noon, and I got home around, I don't know, 5:30 or something, and he was still watching games there. So he was always kind of absorbed in it. And, frankly, it wasn't hard to get him to work hard, because he really enjoyed it. And Eric did have to work at the game, though. I mean, he was just very, very smart. I mean, he was always the smartest kid on the court, and generally he was the best shooter and the best passer and those things. But it's because he worked by any stretch. So for him to go into the ACC and compete against a lot of NBA guys for the most part and succeed and do very well, that came about just because all the other aspects of the game he kind of knew so well. He just knew what to do and when to do it. And Hannah, she picked up some of that stuff as well. She wasn't quite she was good. She wasn't good like Chris's girls were, but she was a good player and excelled in her own way. But it really wasn't her first love. So she got to college and just decided she didn't want to put in all that hard work, and opted to go elsewhere, which she knows, and I know it disappointed us for a while. But it's everybody's gonna lead their own life and do the things they want to do, and you can't force any kids. And that's the one thing I tell parents: you can't force a kid into something. You can't want it more than they do. It has to be something that they love and they want to do. And we'll probably talk about parents a little bit, but our experience of watching them play, and of course going and watching Eric play for 4 years was great fun too. We loved it, and there were a lot of highs and some lows, and that is all part of it. And it was quite fun. But there's almost like idol worship, I think, with some of the parents now with their kids, where instead of just watching them, everything that this child does, they're just maybe too wrapped up in it. And that's, I guess, my 2 cents worth on that. And we can elaborate on that later. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And Eric went overseas and played in Spain and Lithuania and came back and was in the D League just for a short spell. And the Cavaliers put a couple of, I guess, 3 of their NBA guys down onto the Canton team. And he's sitting there. He's like, yeah, this is not what I want to do. Let's get on with life. So he got on, and all of us did. So
you love being a basketball dad so much, you gave up coaching, and I know you love coaching. You were a fixture on that bench for so many years.
Yeah,
So
I did, but we, as a parent, you want to support your children, and that was our opportunity to do so. I couldn't pass that up, and I couldn't put 100% into coaching, knowing that my son is playing, and I want to see that game, and so you go 100% or you don't do it. So I stopped at that time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, thanks so much. Well, Justin, you as an athlete, you were an overachiever to me. I mean, you were 100% everything you tried, and from what I've seen of your kids, they're the exact same way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. My wife comes from a athletic family.
Yeah.
Her brother played football at Delaware, and her dad played baseball at Virginia Tech. So when we got married, I mean, we both love sports, but you don't know what your kids are going to love. But we believe that if you introduce your kids, you have to introduce your kids to everything. And obviously, as a Division I wrestler, I was praying my kids would be wrestlers. That's what all wrestlers want, right? And I introduced them to it, and none of them really fell in love with it. But they all played all sports. We wanted to introduce them every season to different sports. So they played soccer, they played basketball, they played football. And, some of them swam. My daughter was big into swimming for a while, and basketball. So it all varies, but they find the ones they love. But my wife and I, one of the things we really wanted to do is challenge our kids and say, find something you love, right? And for us, I was praying, behind the scenes that it was going to be sports, because that's what I love, and we were fortunate they fell in love with sports. And so they were very driven to do things. So my oldest son, Daniel, was a 3-sport athlete until his sophomore year in high school. Then he started concentrating on soccer. He signed with Clemson, and he, was in a battle there, top 5 team in the country. And as a goalkeeper, they only played one guy. Mm-hmm. And so it ended up, he lost out to a guy. And so he transferred to UNC Charlotte. And it's funny, we were hoping he was going to get drafted. The same guy from Clemson got drafted by the team he thought he was going to get drafted by in the MLS, but that happens. But he's playing in the USL Championship, and it's going great, and he's chasing his dreams, which is awesome. My next son, Nicholas, he's always been all about football. He played, soccer and wrestled. He's the one who wrestled some, and but Nicky was always very driven and not the athlete the other boys were. So it was interesting to see how he attacked things versus the other guys. I would never have to yell at Nicholas. That's not something you have to do. He is so motivated. But he actually went as a walk-on to play Division I football, and like we knew he would, he earned a scholarship very quickly and starting position, and has started a lot of games at middle linebacker as an undersized, middle linebacker. Actually, he'll be playing against Clemson this Saturday, which is going to be a little bit tough one for him. But his school probably gets like $1 million for it, so it's good for them. And then Christopher was always been sort of the best athlete, and really I think part of it's because he's chasing his brothers, right? He's always trying to keep up with the older kids, and always played up in basketball and in other sports. And he had went to PVI initially, and there's a log jam there with Jeremy Roach and Trevor Keels and Anthony Harris, and they just had a lot of really good players. So he went back to public high school, had a great sophomore season, played football there too. Varsity started, played every game. Then he tore his ACL. So it was a little bit different, because when you tear your ACL and then COVID hits, kids are in this sort of, what happens. He committed to Virginia Tech for football, but his true love has always been basketball. I mean, Coach, you guys know your kids all were big basketball players. When your kids love basketball, and that was his love. But he was afraid with the COVID. He took what he had, but he was fortunate that his senior year was great. And, he's on a scholarship to Loyola University in Baltimore, and he's doing great. So we're happy about that. Then my daughter was always into swimming and basketball and soccer, and has sort of chosen earlier that this is her number one. It's just so hard now with soccer. They want you so early. It's almost like the same way with basketball, right? That the coaches, because there's so many coaches, I believe, that make a living off of coaching now, right? With AAU and clinics and all that. The more they have you, the more money they can make. So she's all in on the soccer. So we've been very fortunate. We're in the same situation as you, Coach. When my wife and I, we're on Wednesday night, we were in Pittsburgh for a soccer game, and Thursday we were in Greenville, South Carolina for a football game. Then we were back for soccer games for my daughter all weekend in the tournament. I mean, but it's amazing, and we're very fortunate to be able to do it and support our kids doing it.
Yeah, well, Justin, you're a great dad, and you're also a great friend. You've been a great source of inspiration to me in my sales career. So, well, one thing I want to talk about is the first thing they tell you when your kid starts playing travel sports is that after a game, you just tell them that you love them, and they really don't want you to do a lot of coaching as a parent. And I realize you can't coach her on the sidelines because it takes away from the coach's authority, and you just kind of look ridiculous over there. But I also realize, I played basketball, I played sports, I have an opinion, and it was never going to be part of who I am just to pick my son up and not talk about the game or not try to encourage it, not try to add value. So the first topic, let's talk about, the things you do to encourage your kids or to coach your kids. Or do you guys believe when your kids play a game or were involved in a competition that it was okay just after a game to tell them that you love them? Or were you guys like me, where you're always trying to coach and trying to improve their performance?
Well, I could tell you this. If you ask my wife, she says I'm too loud at games, and I'm too hard on my kids.
I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that.
Which is probably true in a lot of cases. But look, to love somebody is to discipline them and to tell them sometimes when they're doing great and when they're not doing great.
Yeah.
It's probably not the right time during the game, but as much time as you put in to take these kids all over the place. I mean, I know me, I'm a big believer in hard work equals results. And if you can outwork and out hustle people, now you have to have ability, and you got to use your brain. But if my kids aren't giving 100%, I let them know right away. That's for sure. That's just because there's so many things we could be doing, right? I mean, I'm gonna spend the rest of life with my wife, Cindy, and I could be doing something with her. Instead, we're sitting on a field that's 90 degrees, or in a court, or in a wrestling room, or at a football stadium, or at a football camp, or flag football that's 95 degrees in Norfolk. I mean, who wants to be doing that all day on a Saturday, right? But we did those things because you love your kids. But if we're going to do that, they got to give 100%. I believe you got to be firm on them. I'm not a big believer in you got to love them, but you got to tell them when they're wrong, for darn sure.
And your dad was the same way.
Yes, he was.
I couldn't agree more. I probably enjoyed practices as much as games. And I can remember we have a very famous, in our family, a very famous moment. There was back when Katherine and Caroline were like 11 years old. The girls in particular, when they start going down the court on a breakaway layup, their quadriceps aren't developed enough to know how to break down and stop, and go up. So they miss some layups here and there just because they can't stop. And so Caroline had missed a couple of layups in a game just before that. And they were in practice and they were doing full court layups as part of their warm up. And Caroline came down and I watched her miss one layup in practice. Then the next time down, I was sitting in a bleacher over at Kilmer, and she missed another one, and I slammed my heel up against the bleachers, and it was like a gunshot went off. And it was like a gunshot went off, and she looked at me like, "Get the hell out of here," kind of thing. but she, it was a point of emphasis where it, just like you say, if you're going to do it, work hard at it. And especially on the things you're not doing too well. And I always tried not to get too involved in what they're doing. Never wanted to really coach my kids because they're going to get it on the way home anyway. And they're going to get it. And they're going to get it around the dinner table. They're going to get the advice of dad. But I always thought that they should be coached by someone else. But they're going to hear it when they're not given 110.
Yeah.
So,
how about you, Coach Hayes? And I know you can see it, but you can see it both ways. You can see the parent who does too much because kids that you've coached, but you can also see Eric and Hannah from a parent's point of view.
Yeah, well, I coached them pretty much whenever they were playing. So, I had a kind of a different situation. I can kind of laugh about, Hannah, when she played AAU, I didn't coach her then. The Stonewall coach was coaching the girls at that point in time. And she had a particularly terrible game, and they're walking out, and his advice to her, he puts his arm around her and says, "Good thing you're good looking." So I didn't have to say much. He'd say about anything to him, and he could get away with it. So it was very funny. Yeah. But, I don't think I ever told them I loved them, because they knew that I loved them. You put in all that time with them, and I think that, that's kind of evident. Maybe that's something if they've had a particularly bad game, or, something they need to be lifted up. But no, it's just, from my standpoint, we didn't really talk about it on the way home. It kind of, everything, all the experience happened right there at the game, or when I was talking to the team afterwards. And, but didn't, our stuff rarely, we didn't talk about it at home. It was all just encapsulated there on the court, or, on the field of play. But no, I've got a different angle than these guys. And, it was, I didn't really get that experience until Eric got into college, and I could coach him pretty well from, about the fourth row behind Maryland's bench. And so, but, I had to keep my mouth shut. And the only time I can remember making a comment that was heard, I had a good friend named Chip Lozanak, who was just tied into the Potomac program. He coached my summer league team forever, kept the book and all that stuff. And Chip died on March 11th in 2009. And we were down in Atlanta for the ACC tournament. And this was, because I was upset about that. And we're playing the NC State, and we're down like 14 points. And Grievous Vasquez, who I loved, and, he was a great player for the Terps. He just kept jacking shot after shot, and the gym was quiet, and he took another shot, and I just screamed at, I said, "Pass the ball." And, my wife looked at me, but I couldn't resist. But, and actually, I think Eric had 22 that game. He did start passing the ball. But I kind of kept my mouth shut for the most part. There's a couple of AAU moments where I should have kept quiet in the stands and didn't. But what can you? We're human, we're
right.
human. And sometimes the moment gets the better of you, and you can't help yourself.
Hey, Coach, can it be an economic thing? Like Potomac generally is more middle class than Fairfax County. So you have parents that they may be more invested in sports. It might be more important to them, or they might not be as the kind of parents that feel like the world owes them everything, and this guy works for me. How do you think it matters in terms of parents, in terms of coaching at Potomac as opposed to maybe coaching at Robinson or Oakton?
Yeah, I don't think our parents were particularly entitled. They were kind of the ones where they were happy that we're picking their kids up for practice and getting them home and that sort of thing. And I had just a couple situations over the 21 years I was with the varsity that I really can't think of many bad parent interactions. And part of that was just the fact that we were so successful. It's hard to, I guess, whine and complain when, things are really going pretty well. I did have a parent one time call me and wonder why her son wasn't playing more. And he was probably the 9th, 10th man. And we're 19-0 at the time. So, I mean, I'm getting him out there as much as I can, but we're doing pretty good with him getting limited minutes. So,
Right.
yeah. So, and I think also when I started coaching, I struggled some, and any new coach, that's one of your regrets when you get older. He's like, I wish I could have coached the first 5 years with the knowledge I had, the last 16 years. And I had a real good athletic director, Jimmy Qualls, who just recently passed away. And I think he deflected, some of that stuff from me as a young, 20-something coach in my earlier times. So I was kind of shielded and protected pretty well, I think. And but I also think just the parents were just appreciative of what we were doing overall for their kids, not just myself, but my staff. Everybody really poured a lot into the program and helped these kids immensely. And I think the parents, for the most part, really appreciated that.
Yeah. Well, I think last week or the week before, I interviewed Jamie Kaiser. And as you may know, Coach, you're in Tennessee, but Kaiser is a guy who went to Lake Braddock, then he went to Bishop Ireton. He's going to IMG now. He went from being a 2 or 3-star prospect to a 5-star prospect. And so when I was interviewing him, he has a strength coach, he has a basketball coach, he has all these different, one-on-one coaches that he goes to, in addition to everything else he does. And, when we played, there were no, one-on-one coaching. There was no one-on-one coaching. Any additional type of play may have been at AAU if you're good enough. But, you basically got better within the team structure. So, these parents, it's really sometimes a partnership between the player and the parent if they really want to succeed. If you want your kid to be a Division I player these days, they're going to need some help. And I think, Justin's kids are the youngest, so he probably can identify with this a little bit more than the rest of us. But you really have to invest in your kids now if you want to think about getting their college paid for free.
It's interesting. It's interesting you said that, Julian, because now, I mean, it's a big investment for parents. If your kids want to be successful, there's some kids that are naturally unbelievable, right? We all know the ones that, I think Len Bias would have been unbelievable no matter where he played or what he did, right? There's people like that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it's the hard work, and the parents have to be committed. When Chris played for Team Takeover, we're practicing on the other side of the Beltway at 6:00. Well, what time do you have to leave to get there from where we live, right? We got to leave at 3:30, or you're going to sit in traffic for 2 hours, right? So we go over there and do homework. Or my son Daniel, he practiced in Germantown, Maryland. So, I mean, but those times, I will say this for parents, they need to understand is some of the best times with my children are windshield time. When you're riding in the car to practice or AAU. And I mean, when certain songs come on the radio, if it's Drake Jumpman, I know that's I'm with Chris at this age going to these tournaments, and it's incredible memories. Or my daughter, playing whatever the musical is with her teammates in a car, singing it with them. Those times are unbelievable, but it's a huge commitment. And nowadays, I got 2 of my kids go to the same guy Kaiser does for, called Quantum Movement in Vienna. A lot of kids go there. A lot of pro athletes go there now, right? So I'm not saying they're the greatest, but, it's helped. I know my kid helped Jamie a lot. I mean, he's friends with my son, Christopher. So, I mean, he's exploded, and a lot of kids. But I just wanted to put that in because I think it's important. And I'm sure the other guys would say this, driving with your car, your kids to places, you have really great memories, and you get to talk about so many other things, not just the sports. I mean, we talk about everything. So it's really nice. So.
Yeah. Well, and also, Chris Coyer, did you catch the tail end of that with your girls? Was the day of the private coaching beginning when Caroline and Katherine were playing?
Well, actually, Chris had more private coaching than the girls did. Okay. He was going over to see Chris Bauscha, with Quarterback Factory over at DeMatha at the time. And Chris Bausch's program, Quarterback Factory, has blown up. He's got like 15 kids playing in Division I football right now.
Wow.
But it's guy who starts at quarterback at SC is one of his guys. But actually, the girls never really had a lot of individual coaching. The only thing I can think of is that during snow days in school, when they were young, we'd take them over to World Gate, where Marlo Talley was over there, and all three of them would go over there, spend all day. They do drills, basketball drills in the morning, and then they'd have lunch, and then they'd play pickup in the afternoons. So all kinds of ages, and but the mornings were all drills, and that's the only individual type stuff they ever got.
Yeah.
I'm not real big on it. Can you tell?
Yeah.
But you're right. Going back to the windshield time, most windshield time was really good. It was really good. It was a time to talk about a lot of different stuff. Sometimes they were sleeping. There were a lot of windshield time that wasn't so much fun, like winning Region 1 in soccer down in Huntington, West Virginia at Marshall, down there at Marshall.
Driving that back.
And then driving 508 miles to Penn State because they're involved in an AAU showcase tournament, and we're hoofing it trying to get there in time for a game, and they're just sleeping and changing in the car and that kind of thing. Those were kind of tough, but I can't tell you how many times we went back and forth over the Potomac between soccer and AAU and all that stuff on the same days. It was crazy.
My son once had a soccer coach that had a program. We'd go to Holland in the summertime and train for 2 weeks, play against Dutch teams. Great program. And he wanted the kids to be very independent, and he hated parent input. And so it was interesting because he would talk, badly about parents. And so every once in a while, I feel like, does he realize that, the parents here are paying like $5,000 for these kids to train and to go to Holland? And he keeps talking about, these crazy parents. And I'm like, well, it's the crazy parents that are paying this much to send our kids.
Yeah, you're right.
If I was a parent to drop my kid off and didn't do anything, he would never be in Holland as a 12-year-old. It's interesting. Well, one thing that so my son in soccer this year, he was a senior at Yorktown, and it was great because he really began to take ownership of his own soccer. He would train on his own. I would never have to bring it up. Hey, you need to get out there and do some things. Maybe go out there and run, a couple miles. He was driven, and he had taken ownership, and there was nothing that I could do. He wanted it as much as I did. It may have been a little bit late for him to be a Division I player, but he was driven as much as he could be. How do you build that kind of ownership in kids? I mean, you want to put your kids in a position to be successful, but at some point you want them to own it themselves and to make the decisions that puts them in that right decision. Now, how do you get them in the right position? Now, what's the best way to position that so it happens?
Hey, getting back on that last thing, just with
Sure.
all the different coaches, I mean, hopefully they'll take some ownership, because if you're putting all parents today, you're investing so much money in driving here and there for this coach and that coach. And, if they're not taking ownership for it, then you're really kind of wasting your own time and effort. And, you don't want to do that in any situation, much less, with your child. And it seems like it almost takes some of the fun out of it. To me, it's kind of like a nuclear arms race. We've got this device, so now this country is going to get that. And, since all the kids are doing this training, well, we've got to do that too. And now you got the quarterback coach, and you've got somebody that shows you, how to put your fingers on the laces, better than the next guy, or, just I think there's so much coaching now that it's, I don't know that I would enjoy it at this point in time, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, success begets success, all right? And winning is fun. And I think that at a young age, when kids win, they get more interested, and they want to do more, and they want to continue to win because losing sucks.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, and so they take ownership of their own environment. I think because there are winners and there are losers, and those are life lessons. There's winners and losers your entire life, and it's more fun winning. So if you want to win, you got kids all over this area. As they grow up, their universe is small. It's their elementary school and their neighborhood and that sort of thing. And they start realizing as they get older that it's a big world out there. And if they want to continue to win, they got to know that there's somebody out there that's going to kick their butt if they don't apply themselves and work a little bit at it. Yeah. And the first time they get their butt kicked, they go, "Oh God, Dad was right. There's some other people that are pretty good out there. I better do some work." But it's very satisfying to see kids take ownership or take accountability, okay, for their results and what they do. That doesn't mean that you're going to win every game or go out there and sink every basket or do whatever. But as long as you're out there and you're giving it your best shot and you feel like you left it out there, that's an accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. And you know what I mean?
I think that's a huge trait, Julian. As you know, I've owned a number of businesses with my partners, and if our best hires were always from two buckets: athletes and ex-military, because they understand what winning is. They understand teamwork. They understand resilience, getting up when getting knocked down. And I think that, a lot of parents are so focused on their kid, his, AAU team winning, or their kid's the best, or if in soccer, their kid's scoring all the goals. But really, this is all building your kid to hopefully use athletics to get to a school that's better than they could get to on their own with their academics. That's how I looked at it. And to teach them the things that they're going to need to be successful in life and be a contributor to our society in a positive way. And I believe sports is the best thing to do that. That's me. And I think that, we set goals for our kids. Our kids know, look, if I'd rather pay my kids than pay a college institution. So if it doesn't matter what you get your scholarship in, but if you get reduced tuition, that money's going to go in an account for you to later buy a house or start a business that mom and I have to approve of. But, they have to be motivated and want that. And winning is a big part. If you're a winner in sports, you're going to be a winner in life. I do believe that.
I never set a goal for my kids in my life. They set their own goals.
Right.
And
but they knew that if they were going to eat, though, they had to win the game. So, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Maybe get the Slurpee.
If they didn't want to walk home, they better. No, I'm just kidding. But it's no. I mean, we'd go through this all the time. In the summers, we'd say, okay, how we feel about this? You still want to do this? You still want to do this? What do you want to accomplish? The life lessons learned in sports, like you say, are just so vast, so absolutely vast, that it was important. It's important that kids be passionate about something. Going to be passionate about it, you got to set goals. You don't have goals, you don't know what you're doing. You have no idea what you're doing if you don't set goals.
It's interesting. I took my daughter to take the SAT last week, and she's a senior, and she was a little nervous, and she kind of talked herself into into not being ready. And it's, if my son had the same thing, if he was taking the SAT, because of playing sports, he's so used to having those big moments where he has to be ready for that he understands it. Like he gets up early, he prepares, he eats. He's used to those big moments because he has them in sports. He knows he has to hydrate. He knows he has to eat what he's supposed to eat, and he needs to get a good night's sleep. He doesn't like build excuses for himself before the moment because of sports. So it's some of the lessons that you learn when you have to prepare for those big games, even if you don't win them all. Those lessons are very important in life, and I've really seen that as a parent, and how sports teaches them to be ready for those big moments.
Absolutely.
So, well, look, Justin, you mentioned team takeover, and I know Coach Hayes coached the Pacers down in Prince William County, his own AAU team. How important is it for your kids to be on the best team? So, I mean, can they develop and be on good?
That's a good question. So it's interesting, and the three of us all had kids that played basketball, right? And obviously, coached for many years down at Potomac High School. And there's different circuits, right? Now it's changed. It used to be one AAU, and you used to go out to Ashburn and play in the triple threat tournament, and it was all local teams. But the reality is that if you really, want to get noticed, if you play on the circuit, you have a better chance of getting noticed. It's just a fact of life. In soccer, it's even more because, in girls, for example, there's the ECNL, which is probably the best league. And then there's the GA, which is probably the second best league. And then there's a third league. There's so many leagues, and now there's so many kids. And now the teams are recruiting internationals like crazy. Same thing in basketball, but even more in soccer. So if you can get on a team that can get you exposed to the right tournaments, and their coaches obviously have the relationships, just like obviously your son played basketball at Maryland. Gary Williams left because he didn't want to play the AAU game, or at least that's the rumors are, right? And I think that there's a big part of that, right? You'll see kids that play in the Adidas circuit for an Adidas basketball team that only go to a college that maybe, why are most of their guys signing with Adidas schools, or why are teams in the EYBL guys going to play at Nike schools? I think, I hate to say it, I think it's important, but the truth is this: if you're really good, they're going to find you. And the good AAU teams or the good club teams are going to find you and recruit you. I mean, there's a kid that was a really good basketball player who was from, I think it's Kings Fork down there by Lake Anna. He's a really good basketball player, and he was just playing. Well, next thing you know, he's showing up on Team Loaded, and then he's showing up at wherever. I mean, they'll find you if you're good enough. The big powerhouses, of course.
Yeah, they'll find you, but as you know, you go to those bigger programs, you're playing against the better kids as well. Right. So, I coached Derek up to a point, and I think maybe his 13 and under, maybe, or 14 and under, maybe the last time I coached him. And then he went and played with Boo Williams. And now you get an opportunity to, Eric would guard Kevin Durant when we'd play them, because none of the big guys could cover him. So, you get opportunities like that. You're going to get better when you're playing against future NBA players. So I think just that experience too, when you get to the top level, or the highest level you can obtain, you get some experiences that are great, but you also improve, because if you don't, you can be made to look very silly, very easily when you get to that upper level there of competition.
I think it also makes the college coaches feel more comfortable recruiting you when they see you playing with guys. There's just no question about that. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
True.
So, Chris, did you want to add to this? Coyer?
No, I agree with all of that. Yeah. I will say that recruiting, you might get noticed, but recruiting is a process that takes some effort.
Yeah.
It takes a good amount of effort. You just don't open the door and say, come on in. I mean, you got to put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm interested in your school. I'm interested in your school. Come watch me play.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about reclass. So my good friend Jason Coleman, Justin's friend Jason Coleman as well, his son and Coach Hayes, you may know Jason played a late Braddock class of '88 with Hubert. His son was a good player, and he's playing at West Springfield. But he went to Flint Hill and his junior year and got to repeat his junior year. And he was playing well, but he really wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't getting any kind of looks. And went to Flint Hill. He had an okay year. And then this offseason, he just blew up. He lost some weight. He really just started to see the game just started to come to him, and he just started playing well. Had a couple of 40-point games in a row during live periods. And next thing you know, he's on the radar of, he just signed with American University. And he wasn't, American University wasn't even thinking about him as a junior at West Springfield. But that extra year got him a chance to, lose some weight, get some confidence, and just get older. So, as a parent, sometimes we're just happy to get our kids out of the house and, get going. But, reclass can really put kids in a position to be successful. What do you guys think about reclassing and letting your kids get a little bit older? And because a lot of other kids are doing it. And so in some ways you're just kind of, leveling the playing field.
Well, I did that, as you know, with Eric.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. He repeated 8th grade, and wish I'd done it earlier. And for me, I played, and I was a good high school player, and I ended up going to D3 school, Bethany College, and I wouldn't change anything that happened. It was a great experience. I ended up kind of being a big fish in a small pond there. But, I played my senior year of high school at 17, and I played my last year of college basketball at 21. And had I been an 18-year-old, an extra year, of course, I never would have gone to Bethany. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. My whole life would have been different. And,
you wouldn't even know us.
Yeah, you know us. But my whole life would have been different had I had that extra year. And I don't know if it would have been better or worse, to be quite honest with you. I wouldn't change it. But, I wanted to make sure that, my kids had, a better opportunity, I guess, than I had. My folks knew nothing about that. I don't even think anybody did it at the time, but I was born in March, and I was one of the younger ones in my class all the time, and I was kind of a late bloomer as well. I matured late, so it would have helped me just tremendously had I been an extra year older. And I didn't know. When your kid is 12, 13 years old, you don't know if they're going to be a late bloomer or exactly how things are going to work out. It could be helpful. It could be helpful. But, Eric, he spent a extra year in 8th grade, went to private school for a year.
Yeah, you did mention that some of the kids wanted him to start early. I didn't know if that meant, you mentioned to me when we did our one-on-one, that some of the kids wanted him to play. And I guess
the kids that I had that were rising seniors, Eric used to go over to practice, and just do drills with us, and we have shooting games. He'd be like the first one they'd pick. And they were bummed that he wasn't a freshman with them as seniors, because they wanted to play with him just because he was an unselfish kid and they liked him. Yeah. But so no, we spent an extra year of 8th grade there.
Well, Coach, you still can win that. You still can win that second state championship, Coach, even though you got a reclass there.
Listen, let's keep this conversation on the up and up here.
Well, I actually. Chris spent a second year in 8th grade as well.
Oh, okay.
And our old friend Danny Meyer was the one that did it for him. Mm-hmm. From great Robinson coach, right?
Yeah. Great. Chantilly also, right?
Great, yep. Great principal, all that. But all my kids were born in Minnesota, and Chris's birthday was August 27th, and they said, whatever age you are on September 1 is when you go to school. And we tried to get him reclassified, so to speak, when he was in elementary school out here in Chantilly. And they just refused to do it. They wouldn't do it. And it took Danny Meyer standing up to a whole bunch of people when he was at Rocky Run Middle School to do it. And I'll be forever grateful that Dan Meyer did that for him. And, Otherwise, things would have been a whole lot different for Chris as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Coach, I think that, Julian, that it's to have your kids super young, like Coach was when he graduated. You know, I had kids that are born in September. We made sure they were the oldest in their grade instead of the youngest in their grade. I think that, why do you want to rush to have your kids grow up, get out of college and start work? You're going to work a lot of your life. And the best years of your life are in high school, college, a lot of them, right? I think that's fair to say. And if it gives them a better chance to be more successful in the classroom and on the court or on the field, to me, it's a no-brainer. None of my kids officially reclassified. I mean, I thought about doing it. I would have liked to have done it with my son Christopher, but you know, they were on the older side anyways for their grade, so it worked out for them. But I think that it's an absolute no-brainer in my opinion. Especially in today, you know, you're so much competition in sports now. And I said this earlier, it's amazing in soccer how many foreigners are being recruited in from clubs. I mean, you'll see on a starting, you know, Division I soccer program that more than half the team are 22-year-old freshmen from England or Spain. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's what your kid's going to be competing against. So there's nothing wrong with doing it, in my opinion. I think it's something parents should look into for sure.
We didn't even have sports. We didn't even think about sports. I mean, I just was thinking about it going, how's a kid, the last one to get a driver's license, get a date? Because, you know?
Because they don't date like we did it. They have their phones. They do live chat and stuff. They don't date anymore like we did. We had to go out on the limb and ask people out and go pick them up. I don't think kids do that anymore.
Yeah, you were scared to dial the rotary phone just to, you know. Exactly. But hey, just to add to that before we move on, you know, as a coach, and after I did that for Eric, I had numerous people contact me about, you know, should I do this? Should I not do this? And it was, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago now. I don't know if you remember Pat Brizzi, who was the coach at Stonewall Jackson. Well, you know, Pat and his wife, they had a son who was a basketball player and a good basketball player who's now at Villanova, but they were debating whether they should, you know, hold him back. And I explained all the good reasons for doing so. And as it ended up, they took my advice, and he's now, I guess he'll be a redshirt freshman this year.
Who is that? Who is that?
Last name is Brizzi.
Oh, okay.
And
you know, that's our family, you know, at Villanova basketball, you know.
There you go.
Once a Wildcat, always a Wildcat.
All right. But I've never had somebody that held their kid back say that was a bad decision. I have had people come back and say, I wish I'd have listened to you. You know, we didn't hold him back, and you know, we wish we had done so. So I never once heard a regret from doing that.
Yeah. I remember the first people that I heard do it was Tyler Scanlon. It worked great for him, right? Obviously, all-state football player and state champion at Westfield, and had a great career at Boston U and then at Belmont in basketball. And then my older son played basketball with Brandon Slater, who plays at Villanova. And Brandon did it. And, you know, it's just I think that for in the right situation, it's a smart move for sure.
Brandon Slater's a fine young man.
Yeah, good kid. Very good kid. Good family.
Well, I'm getting ready to get Coach Hayes mad again because now we're going to talk about private schools. So you know, when Coach Hayes was at Potomac, he probably had, I think, Coach, we talked last time, maybe 25 Division I players in your time.
Close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Division I players, and 15. There are some coaches like Coach Bentley from Wakefield said he's never had a Division I player at Wakefield, which is hard to believe because he's had some really good teams. And the reason why is not because Coach Bentley is not a great coach, because he is. But a lot of the kids that can play Division I now transfer to private school. So, you know, as a parent, you're going to have a decision whether you should send your kids to private school, not just to reclass, but just whether they should play in the WCAC or just, you know, maybe for academic reasons or whatever. You know, what advice do you guys give to parents who are thinking about sending their kids to private school? And I know, you know, Justin sent Chris to Paul VI for a year, and he ended up coming back and finishing it at Centerville. So what about private schools? Who wants to start here?
Yeah,
Yeah, Coach.
I think probably the reason for sending a kid to private school now is for a good education. I'm not so sure that kids in a lot of public schools are getting good educations, taking all the athletic part out of it. I think parents are probably more likely to do so just so their kid is properly taught, basketball, football, or soccer aside. I probably had 4 or 5 kids in maybe my last 4 or 5 years that ended up Division I players that went to private schools.
Was that right?
And if that's what they want to do, I mean, if that's the parent thinks it's best for them, more power to them. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. You're not going to change somebody's mind. Won't you please come to my school? No, if they want to go to a private school, they're more than, I'm more than happy to have them go. You don't want somebody there who's kind of maybe only in it 50% or 75%. You want the parent to do what the parent wants to do.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, if Scott and Benji didn't steal so many players from Oakton girls basketball, I think Fred would have a whole lot more banners up there.
Now, Scott and Benji, are they at Paul VI?
Yeah. Scott's a great coach at coaching girls basketball at Paul VI, and Jeff Benjamin he's the recruiter. Okay, he's at the 7th and 8th grade level in travel basketball, and he's just plucking them here, plucking them there, and Paul VI girls basketball is absolutely fabulous. They're always in the top 5 in the country, ranked anyway. But they were taking an awful lot of kids out of the Oakton school district. And Scott asked us to come to PVI early on. I've known him since the girls were in like the 5th grade. And the way I look at it is, high school is about a lot of different things. It's about high school is academic, it's social, and it's extracurricular. And on any given day, I can stand up for an hour and talk about how one is the most important one. Okay, just pick one: academic, social, or extracurricular. It changes for each kid a little bit. Yeah, just like Thomas Jefferson, they don't run around trying to get kids into class there. They try to get them to mixers, the social aspects. That Thomas Jefferson is a really huge, big deal, because they're that's what they need. In thinking about private school for my kids, I said, look, I want them to be able to go to school with their friends and, go to parties and, just live that sort of a social experience. I don't need them to expand their horizons by going to a private school. Now, these days, it seems like the curriculum side of it is getting a little wacky, getting a little strange. So maybe these days I would have thought differently than I did 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, thanks. Well, Justin, you have a daughter who's still in high school.
Yes. So I think that for specific sports, there is no question you will get looked at a lot faster if you are in a private school. There are kids that will go play at Flint Hill that average 8 points and 4 assists and 2 rebounds, and they're getting recruited by D1 schools versus a kid that plays at, Hayfield High School, who's averaging 22 points and 7 assists and 5 rebounds. It's sort of crazy. So I do believe that in certain sports, if you're in the real WCAC for football and basketball, you're going to get recruited faster than if you're in a normal public school. I do believe. Now, the AAU is more important for that. A lot of the big time soccer now, the kids don't even play in high school.
That's right.
A lot of them. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. that's just the way that it is. The
Soccer's
schedule-
different than basketball because basketball, your main
Totally
team,
different.
football is probably still your high school, but
Yeah.
soccer-
But I think that, it's a very hard decision. On the flip side, you could get caught in a log jam. I mean, we love PVI, and Coach Furlow was very good to us, but when you get caught on a team where you've got, a Roach, a Harris, a Keels, I mean, you go down the list, it goes on and on. They had 5 guards that were older than my son. I mean, they just said, look, your son's really good, but he's not going to get much playing time in the next. Now, we didn't know all 2 of them were going to tear their ACL the next year. If we knew that, he probably wouldn't have left, right? So, but at the end of the day, you've got to sort of measure those. Those rooms and locker rooms are very crowded. I mean, I know of a kid here locally who played 3 years for a Northern Virginia high school, and he transferred into the WCAC for football, and he was barely getting recruited, and now he's getting recruited by Power 5 schools because he's playing at one of the big power WCAC schools. So it does make a little bit of a difference, but you could go there and never play. So
exactly.
You
it
gotta
worked out.
play.
My kids love public high school, so it was great for us.
It's all about playing. If you're not
Right.
on,
Yes,
if you're
sir.
not out there, you aren't gonna get noticed anyway.
Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about the recruiting process. And Chris and Coach Chase, things have changed a little bit because they have this transfer portal thing. And it's 15 years ago when you made a decision, you made the wrong decision. You had to sit out a year if you wanted to go somewhere else, maybe. But nowadays you can go somewhere. It could be a stepping stone for your next school. So what about advising parents and advising kids about the recruiting process? You guys have any advice for folks generally? And obviously, again, these are fluid times.
I have people that call me all the time that I don't even know, asking for advice. Yeah, and I tell them they should run the other way as fast as they can. No, that's there's a kid who's we know the whole family. She's up in Pennsylvania. She was as a junior, was a first team All-State 5'11" guard. Led her team in scoring. They went undefeated this year, and I will tell you that it was hard to get people to look at her. And most painfully, a program that I know so well, Villanova. I've been talking her up to the coaches there, who I all know very well, for a year, saying, you got to look at this girl, got to look at this girl. They went and they know what she's done and all that. They chose to go past her and take a transfer junior
Yeah,
from another school.
of course.
So I think it's kind of short-sighted a little bit, but at the same time, you're going to fill in your holes on your squad as best you can. And but I think, I'm an old Jay Wright guy. You build it from high school up.
Well, I interviewed Jeff Jones this year. I don't know, Coach, you saw it, but he's at Old Dominion now. He told me if you take a freshman in, if they don't play right away, then they end up leaving anyway. So he says now, he may have a spot or two for a high school kid, but he's just going to, he's going to take transfers because it's almost risky to take high school kids, because even if it just takes a while to get used to the college game. And by the time they're used to it, if they're not happy, they leave anyway.
Get this. There are over 1,000 lacrosse players in the transfer pool. And if there are 1,000 lacrosse players, what do you think there are in football?
That's crazy. A lot of kids are left with no team. A lot of kids are left with no team. But in some cases, think about if you're a coach and you need a shooting guard, and you got a shooting guard that, let's say, plays in the Ivy League or plays in one of the lower level leagues, right? Let's just say, I don't know, the Patriot League, and the guy averages 22 points and 5 assists and 5 rebounds. Are you going to take him over a high school freshman? The kid has still got 2 years of eligibility. If you need a shooting guard, and that coach keeps his job with getting what? W's, right? In basketball, you got to get W's, and really in any of the sports. So they're going to take those kids. So it's hard. It's really hard now for kids get recruiting. The portal has changed a lot, and the COVID year has stacked up numbers. I mean, we have some friends whose daughters play in a Power 5, conference in soccer, and they've got more girls on their team now than ever. 35 to 36 girls on a varsity team. You can't play all those kids, right? And so it's this log jam due to COVID, and it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. But that portal's not going to go away. It's going to change. I mean, it's not going to. It's going to change everything.
Well, when you go back to the life, life lessons, to me, the portal is teaching these kids they don't have to honor their commitments.
Yeah, they don't have to stick it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about the life lessons and what you learn from it, and it sends a bad message to these kids, and they may look like grown men and grown women, but they still have brain damage at that age.
Yeah.
So it's sending the wrong message as far as I'm concerned.
There's no commitment from either side, so it seems. I mean,
You got that right.
the coaches who should be the most committed, they can't. How much am I going to commit to you if I know if I say something mean to you, you're not going to be here anymore. So the whole situation just seems kind of ugly to me. I did see that Georgia's best wide receiver is now a wide receiver at University of Alabama. I mean,
yeah,
you win a national championship and you transfer to Alabama. It just makes no sense to me.
I don't know why they still sign letters of intent.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I have a feeling that was probably due to some NIL money. That sounds like
I would agree.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think it's going to change.
Well, I mean, look at the center for North Carolina. Now, we all know you and I know Hubert. I mean, I played Little League football with him and stuff. I mean, Mondo, he's from Richmond, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is he? 6'10", 6'11".
Yeah.
He's not the prototypical NBA player. I think a lot of people would say that's center now. And he's staying at North Carolina. I wonder how much NLI money he's getting. I'm sure it's over $1 million easy.
Well, and the young girl that tore her ACL from UConn,
Sure.
instead of going into the NBA draft page, whatever her name is, she's sticking around another year, and that's got to be because she's making a lot more money in college than she'll ever make as a pro.
Exactly.
She probably is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Coach, if you would have been at Bethany your freshman year and you were a late bloomer, you probably could have put yourself in a transfer portal and maybe gone to a Division I school, and maybe got some NIL money. So do you think
I could have probably gotten about $500 a year there?
But there is some good aspects of it in that, like my son had a kid who played midfield with him at Yorktown in soccer, and he ended up going to Hampton Sydney to play football, and he D3, and he could have gone D1 walk on and somewhere, but he went D3. I thought it was a smart move because they had the first game this weekend. He played a lot, had 4 catches, and I think if he wants to, he'll be able to move up easily. And a lot of these kids, most kids, they shoot too high up, and they end up going somewhere where they're not going to play, and they end up trying to find a place they can go downwards and get some playing time. So I think if you're wise about it, maybe it can work to your favor.
I mean, look at a team like West Liberty. I don't know if you guys know West Liberty in basketball, right? They're really, really good in Division II, and the last since the portal's been, they're losing 3 kids a year. I mean, they play that offense that scores 110 points, so they got shooters all over the place, and guys are saying we need shooters. Same thing with IUP. IUP's got great Division II basketball. They're losing guys to Division I programs like crazy.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. But coaches jump and leave kids, right? So they recruit you, and then a coach leaves. I mean, the kid. Do you blame a kid if a coach leaves? Then I don't think that commitment is it's a little different. But there are a lot of kids that jump a little too fast, I think, personally.
Well,
but if a coach bolts, a kid should be able to bolt. That's the way I would look at it.
I think it's where we are. Well, how about the next level? So, Coach Hayes, Eric, chased the pro career for a while, and Justin Daniels playing some pro ball down in South Carolina with Charleston. Caroline, she hurt herself, hurt her knee seriously her last year. Otherwise, she had made the Pan American team. She could have played at the next level. How should you advise your kid that wants to chase a dream? A lot of times, and I know, Coach Hayes has dealt with this. I coach kids who played overseas in basketball, and they came back. A lot of them had great experiences and got themselves jobs, and they did really well. Some said to me, Julian, I wish, well, they called me coach, but I wish I would have just taken a job and just started my career. How do you advise your kid about the next level? Because, it's very hard to make a great living at the next level, but they put so much into it, and it's fun to go to Ukraine or go to Eastern Europe or play in the United States USL in soccer. How do you advise your kid about chasing the dream to the next level?
Me personally, I'd tell them just to go for it, because if you don't like it, you come home, but I think it's a regret if you're thinking, you're 35 years old and you're just kind of kicking yourself because, I still, had the itch, and I wish I'd have, kept on doing it. I can understand, like, for my son, I think a lot of guys, if they're not really doing real well, you're just kind of making a living, and you get tired of the overseas experience. I mean, you got a lot of great experience, seeing the world, which is super, but you come back and you're 32 years old and you're in the same place that the 22-year-olds are in terms of getting your life started. So, there's positives and negatives, surely.
Yeah.
I know for my son, Daniel, I mean, we just told him, look, if this is your dream and you want to chase it, then you need to chase it. Because once you start the real work world, I mean, you can't go backwards and go chase that dream again. Right. So, I think that for him, I think he's written down a lot of goals. He believes himself a lot. And he said, if I'm not making a good living, and he knows what that means to him, after 4 years, then he's going to reevaluate it. But that's, sort of the way he's looked at it. But I think that, like I've been asked this many a times. I've got people ask me all the time, why don't your kids have summer jobs? Why aren't they flipping pizza or working at Panera or whatever? And I always tell people, I said, my kids have a full-time job, a couple of them. One's to be a good kid, and that's to talk correctly to adults and their peers. It's to, be respectful all the time, from my boys to women and treat them right. But it's also to find something they love and chase that. And, and again, I said this earlier, because it's sports, it's great. But think about, Christopher, example, he spent so many hours shooting, and I would sling him so many balls. I actually said, that's it. I got to buy a shoot away. So I got to shoot away from my house, because I just was out there constantly. So, he's got what would be equivalent to a 5-year scholarship at Loyola at $70,000 a year. You're not going to make that much flipping burgers or anywhere near it. And I think what you're learning from that is greater. And I just think that that's important. I think parents get too short-sighted on that. Let your kids love something and chase it and set goals, as you talked about. I think it's super important for them.
I agree with that. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, well, Katherine and Caroline never wanted to be professionals. They never wanted to be professional athletes. They didn't care much for the culture, basically. They sort of grew up knowing that if they were good enough and they were to get a scholarship to college, that for girls, that's really the best thing they can do, is go to the school of their choice. That's the carrot at the end. It wasn't until Caroline played on that USA women's basketball team in the Pan Am games that she said, well, I guess this is fate. Maybe I should go out and play WNBA or whatever. We knew she was going to be the first round draft choice, the Connecticut Sun. We already knew it when she got hurt. And, but she didn't have any drive to do the work to get back, really, because she never really wanted to do it in the first place. For guys, it's a little different. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of dollars and cents.
I got you.
A lot of reasons. And yeah, my son would have loved to have played in the NFL. But he's smart enough to understand that that was maybe a, 3, 4, 5 year thing at best, So,
Well,
and it was never anything I wanted to see,
yeah. So, well, guys, this has been great. So one thing I wanted to go around and do, before we begin to close is, when you think of your life as a parent, and particularly a sports parent, what are things you would do a little bit differently, if anything, or the things you would take back or do a little bit differently in retrospect? For example, my son, played a lot of soccer, and we really chased it. Ended up not playing in college. Ended up going to he's going to UVA, so it's going well for him. But he's just a student. And I asked myself, would I have done anything different if I'd known that he wasn't going to play soccer at the next level? And it's all been worth it because it was such a great ride. But there are probably things I probably would have done a little bit different if I had a chance. But how about you guys? You guys as kids have played, and in Justin's point of view, are playing at a very high level. Are there things that you regret or would have done a little bit differently if you could do it all again?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the kids are the ones that are really doing it, right? They're the ones putting in the hard work. I think as parents, we introduce them and then we follow them. I think there's some times, I mean, I can remember vividly, like we were going out, my son was playing in a championship game at the Germantown Sportsplex, and it was pouring rain, and we were driving it I think the game was like 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. and we're driving in the rain. And I told my son, I'll never forget this. I regret this. I told him, I said, listen, every time there's a shot, you better get your whole body behind the ball because it skims off of and we were playing on the Bermuda grass field there. I said, it's going to skim. You better get behind. I got it, Dad. Don't tell me what to do. I was like, okay. Well, they lost 1-0 and the ball skimmed. He didn't get I remember I went up to the coach and I said, hey, I need your bag of effing balls. And he's looked at me like, what? And I said, I took my son up to the field above it, and I cranked shots at him for like 30 minutes, and he learned to get his body behind the ball. I mean, other people were looking at me like crazy. I drove another kid on the team there, and I remember his parents were like, oh my, sort of appalled by the whole thing. I mean, I am a little too intense sometimes. But I do probably regret that. But I do think he learned a lesson there, right? That you don't know everything at a young age. But, that's probably like a situation I probably could have handled a little different.
I've had moments like that too. So I take those back.
But I don't think he forgets it. That's for sure.
Exactly. Anyone else, Coach or Chris?
For me, I guess probably my regret would be just the way I kind of coached and taught Hannah after, because she followed Eric. And to be honest, Eric just was completely committed, and he was into it. And if whatever I would tell him to do, he would work on it, and we would work on those things in the driveway. And then when it came time for Hannah, when Eric was off in school, I kind of expected the same effort from her, and I didn't always get it. And I did punt the basketball into the woods a couple times. The house. I shouldn't have done that, but I think I made her go get it. But that was me kind of just not treating her as the individual that she was, and expecting something out of her that, maybe she wasn't ready to give or just wasn't willing to give.
Yeah.
And so, I screwed up a bit with Hannah in that regard. And I don't know, maybe that's why she decided she didn't want to play, when she got to college. But that's a regret of mine.
Do you think, Coach, if you didn't coach her in high school, she would have stuck with basketball? Do you think she?
I don't know. No, I just don't think she really was that into it. I think she did it maybe, in a degree. I mean, she was good at it, but also it was just kind of the family thing to do. So, but she had a lot of good friends from it and a lot of good experiences, and I don't think she's, regrets any of it. But like I said, I could have handled things a little bit better in the driveway than I did.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you're a famous Northern Virginia sports parent. Yeah, everyone knows who you are. Is there anything that you would take back or do a little bit differently? You can't really fuss with the success that you had.
A couple of times when I scratched my butt in the grocery store, I
Yeah,
wish I had
exactly.
Now, really, I've been sitting here thinking about it while they've been talking. I've never given it any thought. I've never given it any thought. There's, all the good, the bad, the ugly. It was just such a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
Whether it was dumb luck or whatever, we made a lot of great decisions. Going to Oakton, it was one of the best decisions we ever made for our kids, all the way around. And shout out to Fred Priester. It's his birthday today.
Oh yeah. Happy birthday, Coach.
Yeah, the old fart. But no, my wife and I made a lot of really good decisions. Many of them just lucky.
Yeah.
And but even the bad decisions we made turned out to be good learning situations. And I can't, you're gonna, that question really pisses me off because now I'm gonna be thinking about it for a couple of weeks.
Exactly.
And I just couldn't ask for any more. I think that I stopped playing competitive golf for 15 years because of these kids. And I think if I had it all to do over again, I probably would have at least kept my hand in it. And that's probably, I don't know. I can't think of a mistake. I really can't.
Yeah.
That would have been hard to do because you love winning, and if you're not golfing a lot, it's hard to be good.
I started dropping out of tournaments.
Yeah.
Because did I really want to play in this tournament, or what? I didn't want to miss a game,
right.
or something. And so 2 or 3 times doing that, I just said, all right, this is stupid. I just need to put them away. Put them away.
I bet you the three, all of us have the same thing. If you look at our kids or our friends now as adults, they're parents from our kids' teams, because we I don't want to say I neglected my friends that I had a lot growing up. I'm still really good friends with, one friend from high school, Brian McCarthy. We do tons of stuff together still, but the rest of them are really friends from sports teams, because you're if your kids are committed, you got to show the commitment, and you're there all the time. You don't want to miss things. I don't want it. Sounds like you didn't. So,
well, there were 3 things. We had 3 things we told each of our kids when they started to play sports. We said, you're going to learn a lot of life lessons. Your universe is going to expand way high, way larger than it ever could if you don't play sports. And number 3, you're going to get hurt. And it's inevitable. You're going to get hurt, and there can be no regrets, regardless of what it is. There could be no regrets. So,
all true.
Yeah. Well, you guys know it's you guys are so important to the history of the sports of Northern Virginia. I mean,
Coach, please.
Well, Coach, your record, and then your son's record, especially, and also Hannah was a very good player. Justin, your family, your brothers as well, their kids, your kids, Chris, you and your wife, and then your kids. Even me, my sister won 2 state championships. My son got to the state final in soccer. I wasn't much of a player, but those memories that we built. I wouldn't trade them for anything. My only regret is we didn't do a little bit better, but I loved every moment of it, and I love being part of this Northern Virginia sports community. It's amazing.
So what you're telling me is that maybe you were a better referee than you were a player.
Coach will probably tell you I wasn't very good at that either.
I actually think you'd be coaching in the NCAA tournament right now, for sure.
I wish I would have coached. I wish I would have ended up coaching. That's my biggest regret, is that I
You
didn't
still
become
do
a
it.
coach.
Why can't you do it now?
Well, I'm an old guy now, man. I'm pushing 50. I'm pushing 57.
That doesn't mean anything.
You're a youngster.
Yeah,
Yes, he is.
yeah. So, well, look, guys, this has been great. A lot of great information. You guys have been amazing parents, athletes, coaches, mentors. So, but thanks for doing this. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it, Julian. Thank you. Thanks for everything you do. You've been, I know you help a lot of kids and bring a lot of young kids on. I just talked to, Coach Chris's high school coach. You had his son Darren on, and it's really, really great that you bring not only folks, old timers like us and parents, but the young kids on. It's really cool.
Oh man, I love it. Again, I've talked to your kid. Your kids are all wonderful. I don't know how they end up so great, and obviously their mothers. I should probably do another one with the
You
mothers.
probably should do one with the moms. Yeah, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
because it's got to be
Gotta put
something.
up with guys like me, I guess. Probably.
It's got to be something else. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call up one of my kids and say, you should see this podcast that Julian Brown did. He says, I've already seen it.
Oh,
They,
yeah.
they watch your stuff. They
Well,
watch it.
some of the earliest ones, Coach Hayes was the second one I did, and then I think like the fifth or sixth one was your daughter's, Chris, and then I think I did Chris Kuzemka, one of the earlier ones too. So, and now because of you guys and your kids, people want to come talk. It's almost like a privilege.
You've had some big guys on, from Tommy Amaker to you've had Hubert on too, right?
Hubert's one, probably the biggest ones I haven't had on there were Hubert and Kara Lawson. So
Kara Lawson, that'd be a good one.
Why
Don't-
wouldn't she be on it? That's crazy. She hasn't been on it.
maybe one day. So
See, you've done Jasmine.
I got Jasmine,
And,
Grant,
Yeah.
Andy Heck, who's still coaching in the NFL. Chris Warren is a guy I played with, and he's just a little bit shy, but I'm dying to get him on.
Kara
Anyway,
Lawson,
guys, look, this
Kara
is-
Lawson would be perfect.
Yeah, Kara would be great, but I think she's busy. So I don't want to put too much pressure on her. But again, guys, look, I really appreciate your time.
We appreciate it, Julian.
Thank you. Hey, nice to get to know you two from afar. So
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Enjoy. I think you said you're in Tennessee, right?
I'm in Nashville. Yes.
Nashville. Enjoy it. Awesome town.
Yeah, it
Look,
is.
Those
It
little private schools won't hire him there because they don't think he's a good enough coach.
I didn't. I've given up that. So
He's got that Tennessee thing going too. He's got it. You can hear it.
I think one of the big hoop schools there is what, Brentwood? Is that the big
yeah,
one? The big
yeah.
ones?
Brentwood's about 5 minutes from us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brentwood Academy is the one that has the all the NBA, NBA and NFL
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
A kid who plays football with my son Nicholas. He was a big basketball star there. Great player. Had a bunch of D1 basketball scholarships. We want to play football. So
Is that Kurt Staples coaching there, coach? Is that Kurt Staples from UVA coaching at Brentwood?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
I think so. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Have a great night, Julian.
all right, guys,
Thank you.
enjoyed it, guys.
Guys do.
We'll
Thank you,
be
guys.
talking soon. All right, enjoyed it.
All right.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks.